This curriculum analysis is a presentation for the Franciscan University of Steubenville's curriculum course taught by Dr. Charles Joyce. This presentation was created and developed by Amy Nyeholt for March 1st, 2013. This presentation will attempt to analyze and critique curriculum utilizing the 5 core structures of foundation, organization, content, assessment, and critique through its review, analysis, and evaluation. In order to understand the overall view and purpose for this assignment, we must take a look at the whats and the whys of the project itself. I have chosen to evaluate and critique the Ohio Learning Standards for K-12 English Language Arts in an effort to understand my field of teaching and its curricular goals in a more distinct and effective manner. My presentation will focus on a look at a transition from junior high to graduation. As we continue to learn in our course this semester, evaluation of any kind is beneficial when answering the question of why it is we are evaluating. 3 particular reasons stand out to me for this particular project, being to, first, improve my teaching for myself and more importantly for my students. Second, to examine the effects of introducing a new curriculum and what that process looks like statewide. And finally, to distinguish among the best, to reevaluate my experience in curriculum in comparison to other models. Hopefully, these purposes will engage each piece of the goals set forth in my presentation. To introduce the primary factors and contributors toward the chosen curriculum, we must first look at an in-depth review, analysis, and evaluation of the foundations present for the Ohio Learning Standards in English and Language Arts for a K-12 classroom. Reviewing the main contributors and foundational elements of the Ohio Learning Standards and model curriculum, one must answer questions of who, where, and when. The newly formed curriculums were produced and developed primarily by teachers across a wide range of state systems and also through core groups of teachers who were engaged in and understood prior curriculum and standard strategies of the new standards in education. Ohio also has commissioned the engagement of the PARC model content frameworks for the development of the content and assessments through utilizing resources that pertain to systems they work with. The production and development of these new curriculums were analyzed and approved by the Ohio State Board of Education, whose goal for this new curriculum, as their website describes, says that the state board shall adopt a model curriculum. The model curriculum shall be aligned with the standards to ensure that the academic content and skills specified for each grade level are taught to students and shall demonstrate vertical articulation and emphasize coherence, focus, and rigor. The goals set forth by the state and their approval of the current models of curriculum are focused around the new set of standards, but those standards are focused on student achievement and the betterment of education as a whole. Therefore, the purposes and the philosophies put forth by the Ohio State Board, as well as groups of teachers and a public review of the new curriculums, as well as articulation and coherence that the state so rigidly asks for, fall in line with the changes we're seeing in all curriculums today, whether that be in the state of Ohio, the state of Pennsylvania, or across the nation. Locating some of the issues that might arise within an analysis of the foundational elements of this curriculum and its method, one must support that this curriculum has its legitimacy in its offering. Understanding that this curriculum has been reviewed and modified by a wide range of sources and has been implemented and worked through provide legitimacy for its implementation statewide. The philosophy stated by the state and its Board of Education matches with the shift and transition that much of the educational world is currently facing, and it provides solidarity and community with other schools, districts, and states that are offering the same options. The philosophy inherently produces an ideal of community, yet also the dangers of bias. However, the credibility and creativity promoted by this wide range of teachers, administrators, and board members offers a wider variety and adaptability for diversity in curriculum and in its foundations. Taking a look at some of the evaluation for the foundational elements of this model curriculum, I see that it emphasizes a variety of need, and with the diversity that is so lenient in our current educational system, I believe that the evaluative process that has gone on with the use of a variety of needs, including the needs of teachers, the needs of districts, and the needs of students primarily, I believe that this foundational curriculum does emphasize those needs. I also believe that through the content and the analysis of the foundational elements of this curriculum, it reinforces the need for community. The Common Core standards, while they are an intimidating threat to most school districts at the moment, are really providing a way to reinforce a sort of communal view of education where everybody is sharing and looking at new ways that other states and other curriculums are reinforcing this new idea of standardization. And it also recognizes different levels of concerns. As we learned in our learning session, the different stages of concern complement this kind of idea of the reinforcement of community, because we are hearing from a variety of different viewpoints, which then begins to decrease the amount of bias that is held in the new curriculum. So all in all, I feel that the foundational elements of this new curriculum set forth by the Common Core standards in the state of Ohio has its roots in a good place. A second structure utilized for the analysis of the Ohio standards for English and Language Arts from the K to 12 grade is an analysis of its organization. In this organizational analysis, we will look at three main factors of review, analysis, and evaluation. First, taking a look at a review of the organizational processes of the Ohio Learning Standards, we see that it is a web-based tool aligned to standards, meaning the Common Core, that first presents information specific to content area by grade level, grade band, and course. Understanding the specificity here is an important aspect that we'll get to in analysis and evaluation. It is also aligned to the standards that provides curricular and instructional guidance, so the curriculums that are based out of this organizational review really do have guidance in terms of some of the documents and guidelines that they have provided to the state. Thirdly, it includes instructional strategies and resources. Now, these instructional strategies can look like assessment tools, resources such as textbooks or books on theory or philosophy, or even other websites with different uses for 21st century skills. But all in all, the instructional strategies do provide a wide array of resources and strategies for teachers who are beginning to implement this new curriculum. It also informs assessment development, and while that sort of fits into the instructional strategies and resources, they take a unique look at assessment by providing examples, both formative and summative, but also looking at the collaboration of those two different types of assessment, as well as a variety of other assessments as well. So all in all, by taking a look at the analysis of the organizational patterns of the curriculum, we see a lot of chronological sequencing within the instructional strategies, the assessments, and the other portions of the review. We also see that they have developed standards. Now, with the rise of the Common Core coming in, the development of the standards is used primarily through a gap analysis, and they have documents that show standard-to-standard evaluation coming from the old Ohio standards into the newly revised Common Core. And they have a help for teachers to sort of understand how to go through that gap and change their curriculums. They also have progress and growth models, not only for the nature of the curriculum, but for their students as well, to see how students are utilizing the sequencing in a way that is easy for them to use. And then through the gap analysis, as I reviewed later, they are showing particularly how the progress of these standards is being met. Looking at the organizational evaluation then, I believe that the organizational patterns that the curriculum has set up for the Ohio Standards in K-12 English Language Arts has a distinct relevance to today. Based in its Common Core reflection, we see that the Common Core, yes, has taken a stand in sort of reevaluating and changing all of the curriculums statewide for Ohio, but it also brings back then that resource functionality, but then also standards that are being built up for students and teachers in sort of a cohesive way among state courses as well as national courses. And one other thing I think was interesting about the organizational evaluation was this 21st century outlook, that they are utilizing instructional strategies and that they are utilizing content, as we'll get to later in the presentation, that are developed through technology and through some of these skills that our students are currently processing. So the curriculum really does hit on all of these things that I believe are some of the important conversations going on about curriculum today. A third structure that is imperative to the analysis of curriculum comes through an analysis of content, through review analysis and evaluation that we will take a look at for the Ohio Learning Standards for K-12 English. As we begin to get into a review of the content present in this curriculum, we noted on the website and the Ohio Department of Education that there were key shifts for this change in curriculum and why it was being implemented. First off, the curriculum is being created to build knowledge through content-rich information. And really, what's going on here in terms of the content is that they are trying to provide a rich example of multiple, diverse, collaborative, and unique curriculums that fit what the students' needs are for today. And ways in which they are doing that is through reading, writing, and speaking grounded in evidence from the text, both literary and informational. What is a change from the normal standard Ohio curriculums to the curriculums being set up now that I'm analyzing is this shift to informational and inquiry-based text, including nonfiction. And so the informational and nonfiction tests, because they implement a new study of inquiry, are being used in a more realistic way and are being implemented in ways that further negotiate what our students are learning and what they should be learning for college and career readiness. Thirdly, we see part of the review of this curriculum would be, in terms of content, regular practice with complex text and its academic language. So while we also see a new integration of nonfiction and informational texts, there is also more aptitude for the student in terms of their ability to understand language and structure, as well as a really distinct view of vocabulary. Also, the fourth point here is that they have noticed that there's a growing need for diversity in curriculum culture, and that could be diversity between racial or gender stereotypes and adding in a more unique and widely diverse curriculum that way, but also in terms of differing learning styles. Now, these learning styles could be developed by any of the teachers who've had experience with this, the state who has data in terms of what types of learning students need to be provided with, and so the curriculum has been set up to show those needs and understand where the curriculum needs to head next. So in analysis of this content, part of the structure of the content, first of all, is that they're using curriculum maps for transition to get into these new curriculums and standards. And part of these curriculum maps is that the units are built around big ideas rather than specific chapters, which many teachers focus on in the past. These units are built around big ideas or enduring understandings. That way, the creativity is not being stifled from teacher to teacher, making us teach the same thing statewide, but it's the idea that is being uniform rather than the curriculum as a whole. Also, there are sequencing units, and then making interdisciplinary connections. So there has been a big focus on crafting and looking at history within the English language arts. Throughout my review of the curriculum, I could see many instances of where they drew in informational text for historical background or scientific experiments for a scientific background of some of the stories or language we've been writing, as well as mathematical backgrounds as well. So they are continuing in this curriculum to make these interdisciplinary connections to fulfill the English and language arts standards. Also, continuing from the review of the content, they are addressing the needs of diverse learners and integrating technology, while also developing assessments and identifying resources that can be used online or in the regular brick and mortar classroom as well. And so through this development, they are integrating new skills for the 21st century learner. In an evaluation of this content, we see that there is a growing process in inquiry throughout the detailed development of the enduring understandings, down to the instructional strategies, into the sequencing of the development of the curriculum. And so as I began to analyze and critique the curriculum for the Ohio Learning Standards for English and Language Arts grades K through 12, I noticed this growing process in inquiry that has been utilized over the Common Core standards as well in our educational systems today. One of the other ways I noticed in terms of implementing the diversity into the curriculum with their sections for diverse learners in every instructional strategy portion of the curriculum, I noticed that it was going towards pursuing this end to bias that Armstrong noted in his work Curriculum Today by stating that bias will always be in curriculum, yet we still need to be working towards curriculums that are bias-free. Now, understanding that that will always be there, yes, it's our goal to constantly work towards it. But I see that in the Ohio Learning Standards based off the Common Core for the curriculum, the model curriculum for English and Language Arts. Another thing I saw in terms of the diversity that Armstrong talks about to avoid bias is this eliminating of one singular learning style being prevalent in the curriculum. I believe that the curriculum set forth by Ohio warrants learning for a variety of different learning styles as we have in our educational systems today. Lastly, I believe that it creates a lot of room for innovation, and in terms of those, going back to those stages of concern, we see that innovation and collaboration are really some of the keys to creating a unique and successful curriculum. And so, as Armstrong notes chapter after chapter, collaboration and utilizing multiple minds for the creation of a curriculum, as we've seen in this content, really does create room for innovation for the teachers to take this curriculum even further into different schools and districts that will prepare them differently. A fourth structure that we need to analyze here in terms of the assessment of this curriculum is in itself assessment. And so in a review, analysis, and evaluation of the assessment is necessary to understand what problems and what conflicts might arise in the assessment of a varied group of learning styles, systems, and teachers. In a review of the assessment set forth by the Ohio Learning Standards for English Language Arts grades 8 through 12 were the primary ones I was focusing on here. In terms of assessment, they were very specific with specific types of assessments to use within the curriculum. Now, they only gave a few examples of each, but the guidelines set forth give a wide variety of the types of assignments that could be used and ideas for teachers across the state. Now, most of these are supported by the PARCC assessment framework, which Ohio collaborated with in 2011 to develop these new model curriculums for their state. They are primarily standard-focused, leaning on the new Common Core standards as well as some of the old Ohio State standards, but all of the curriculum and the assessments given are related directly to the standards. They utilize primarily vertical design while also utilizing whole to sequencing design for the development of their assessments, going from a large pool, a large or general idea, the big ideas that we spoke of earlier, into understanding more and more in depth as you get farther and farther down the details of those big ideas. And their assessments work much the same way. So, for instance, in 8th grade, the curriculum stated that the students would do a compare and contrast of two characters in a story, or English and Language Arts. And then in the 9th through 10th grade standards, they said they would do a compare and contrast analysis of characters and their dialogue, for instance, a more specific compare and contrast. And then in the 11th to 12th grade standards, within the curriculum and the assessments provided with it, it would look like a compare and contrast analysis of two poems, going even further in depth to look at how the student has been progressing from assessment to assessment as their study of compare and contrast has been growing. And so that vertical design and whole sequencing has been utilized in this curriculum. In their assessments, they also definitely are applying to a diverse group of learners, looking at assessments that are both formative and summative, but also an amalgamation of the two. They do not necessarily describe that these assignments are both formative or summative in the curriculum, but give teachers and districts the opportunity to decide for themselves in what unit and in what idea will the formative and summative assessments be done. And so understanding that each school is different, that each school has a diverse set of learners, they can adjust the curriculum then from teacher to teacher to understand and utilize for the different classes that we see ourselves in. And then finally, I saw a lot of millennial collaboration in the assessment, that our assessments were not just tests and quizzes that so many of us have relied on for so long, hopefully not anymore. But this aspect of collaboration is very, very important to what we now call the millennial generation, as we learned in our learning sessions and as we read in Armstrong, that the millennials are a collaborative, self-achieving group that sort of combines the independence of the individual, but also the necessity of promoting that independence and sharing that independence with a collaborative group. And so we see assessments like literature circles being done, where a student brings their work to the circle, and then the assessment is done by showing everyone else what you have done, a collaboration of your ideas. Or Socratic seminars in the 11th to 12th grade. We see that assessment getting more and more detailed over the course of the grade level, but also continuously putting in this millennial collaboration as we begin to see more and more of our students functioning well in this type of generational setting. In order to look at some analysis of this assessment, all of the assessments are research supported, so underneath the instructional strategies regarding the curriculum, there will be a section for research that was done to support the types of assessments being utilized, which I think is a fantastic representation of utilizing the understanding and the work that went into the creation of the curriculum, and then to support the implementation of it. Also, in analysis of this, I would say that a lot of the assessments were focused on inquiry and discussion, which solves the issue of the Common Core standards wanting to be more inquiry-based, collaboratively based for the students that we see in our classrooms now. Once again, they also promoted the unity of diverse learning styles, as well as diversity in the type of assessment that is being done, not necessarily just in content, but also in practice. And then in terms of the assessment, one of the primary reasons that they're utilizing this, especially in the later and high school grades, is for the college and career readiness. These assessments are being done show that in one singular example, for reading, in one of the Common Core threads, 62% of high school seniors were not ready for college or career after graduation based upon their testing scores. And so these assessments are being utilized to ensure that the students, supported by research, supported by inquiry and discussion, and a diversity of their learning styles, are ready for the new world when they come to it. And finally, an evaluation of the assessment, we see a lot of student-centered standards that are providing not only the diverse learning styles, but also the support of the millennial learning styles as well. We also see progress in diversity, which in terms of the curriculum is something that most people are working towards but have not yet achieved. And so this diversity is an important thing for the achievement of our students and our curriculums. Also, I saw a lot of innovative technology use and a collaboration of technology use in the form of blogs and wikis and online Socratic seminars, online chatting, Twitter, and all of these different types of 21st century skills that we are preparing students for through the use of innovative technology, as well as skills necessary like independence and collaboration that are necessary for the world these students now live in. In my critique of the Ohio Learning Standards for English and Language Arts for primarily 8th through high school learning foundations, I believe that they did an excellent job of creating and crafting this curriculum based on the 6 C's I've provided for my critique. I know we studied 8 C's. I have some 6 C's of my own for this curriculum. Firstly, I believe the curriculum to be entirely coherent. Now, it has its issues. However, the coherence from grade level to grade level was excellently adapted and excellently utilized and promoted by the Ohio Department of Education, the teachers who collaborated to create it, as well as those who have practiced in its implementation over the last couple of years, and we saw evidence of that in my presentation. Within this coherence, it is internally consistent. From grade level to grade level, we see that vertical design and that whole to some part of the curriculum being utilized so that the students, as they progress through the curriculum from 8th to 12th grade, are learning and progressing in each of these standards, becoming more and more defined and more detailed in the consistent types of standards they are being exposed to in the curriculum through their content and through their assessment. I believe that the curriculum also had a great deal of continuity. In its continuity, there was not a lot of omission of what I have seen in the primary standards and assessment bases that I've looked at in our course this year, and I believed it to provide some overlap, but overlap in a way that was beneficial for the student coming from one subject to the next. Also, conducted, my 4th C there, stands for the fact that within the foundational elements of this curriculum, the amount of research that was conducted seemed to be quite extensive, however, was entirely helpful in understanding where these standards came from, what the curriculum was trying to accomplish, and what purpose it has for students as well as teachers and school districts. So the research conducted for the assessment is both positive for that, for the teachers and administrations, but also for the modern day student that we see today. As Armstrong declares in his work, we see that many of our students today fit into this sort of postmodern or millennial sort of generation, understanding their independence, understanding their need for groups in that independence, and then understanding that they are an achieving group of students is important research that was conducted in the creation of this curriculum. My 5th one here is critical in terms of the abilities of this curriculum to evoke critical thinking in our students through the utilization of inquiry-based methods. And then finally, the content of this curriculum was measured against the content standards, as well as measured against teachers and administrators and school systems across the nation in order to provide the best content possible for our students. So all in all, I believe this curriculum to have all of the elements in order to have a successful curriculum, including diversity, including a resurgence of the millennial generation, and other things in terms of the 6 C's I've listed here, to provide the students of Ohio for English and Language Arts with a clear, coherent, consistent, continuous, conducted, and critical content-filled curriculum. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation for the curriculum course for the Franciscan University of Steubenville.